I'm going to start this one off with a big question. Is Rockman 2 the best game in the Rockman series? It has to be either this or Rockman 3, and Capcom has an official position. On the back of the PlayStation re-release for Rockman 2, it says, the best game in the series. And who am I to argue with Capcom? The original Rockman was one of the 3 big hits of the 1987 holiday season, so naturally there would be a follow-up, and Rockman 2 is the bigger, better version of that. This is the game that defines what the Rockman series is. It takes the basic concept of the original game and puts down a foundation that Capcom is going to follow for the next several decades. And yes, I've been letting the intro play through so that I could specifically get to this rocking opening music. The Mega Man games always have good music, but I feel like the music in Mega Man 2 is just one step above everybody else. I mean, Capcom puts Mega Man 2 music into their arcade rhythm games. The story of the game is 1 year after defeating Dr. Wiley, he's returned with 8 more robots for Rockman to fight. And really, do we need any more story than that? Most of the gameplay conventions are the same as the original. You start out being able to pick which robot you want to fight, clear its stage and defeat it at the end, and you can use its special ability. And each of those special abilities has their own task for you to carefully mull over, and then choose the Metal Blade, because the Metal Blade is the best. In fact, that's one of the 2 major problems with Rockman 2. While your weapon choices are a huge improvement over the first game, the Metal Blade is so outstanding that you'll hardly ever use anything other than it, including your default gun. The Metal Blade does more damage, can shoot in 8 directions, goes through enemies, can damage almost anything, and costs so little weapon energy to use that you'll inevitably recharge it just by using it. And it's an effective weapon against 4 of the 8 robots, plus extremely useful on some of the other bosses. But let's go through the other weapons. And you'll note that for most of these I only use them against a boss. The Leaf Shield can absorb attacks, or it can be shot outward in 4 directions. I found it to be most effective when hitting people above you. Similarly, the Air Shooter swoops in an upward arc. The Quick Boomerang covers the gaps that the Metal Blade doesn't. It's cheap and it damages some enemies that other weapons can't, but it's also kind of weak. The Flash Stopper stops time, but real players don't need to do that. The bubble lead rolls on the ground, which does give it some limited use. The Clash Bomber can blow up some walls, but you can't fire another one while the time bomb is out. Finally, the Atomic Fire is a charging shot. It's the worst weapon out of the bunch because the charge takes a long time, it's very expensive to use, and it generally doesn't do that much damage. One thing you're going to notice about playing Rockman 2 as opposed to Mega Man 2 is that all weapon damage is halved, and all damage that you take is doubled. It's the equivalent of difficult mode in the US version. Rockman 2 is in a bit of a weird place where the stages themselves generally aren't that difficult, except for the amount of damage that you take. This is the Rockman game that introduced the E-Can, although they're not named in the game. You can carry a few of these to refill your health bar at any time. In Rockman 2, they don't persist across continues, so I definitely recommend using rather than losing them. Another big change from the first game is the addition of special equipment. Items that you'll get after you defeat certain bosses. Item 1 creates floating platforms that you can hop between. Item 2 is a jet that you can ride on. And Item 3 will crawl up and down a wall, changing direction when you jump. You'll have to use these to get through certain segments on the final stages of the game. And that brings me to the other major problem with Rockman 2. There are several points in the game where you have to use a particular item, and if you don't have enough energy, then you're stuck. Only the quick boomerang hurts the dragon, and there's only one weapon that hurts the final boss. There are places where enemies will spawn infinitely, and you can just sit there for a long time, recovering all of your energy. In fact, I'd recommend that you do this. But on the final boss in particular, you can't recover weapon energy. So you just have to get a game over, then continue, and then you can try again. It makes the boss rush at the end of the game pretty challenging too. If you screw up, you might not be able to recover. Some regular viewers of this channel may have noticed that when it comes to the very popular games, the ones where I don't really need to explain what they are to people, I like to rank things. And obviously I'm not ranking the weapons, because Metal Blade's the best, and why would you use anything else? So instead, I'm going to rank all of the stages. From worst to best. Number 14, Wiley 6. I've already mentioned how you can have some trouble on the final boss due to not being able to recharge. Well, all this stage is the final boss and some drips. Kind of a boring run-up to him. Number 13, Wiley 5. Yeah, the final boss rush is a Rockman tradition, and this is the first game where they're actually implemented as separate capsules that you enter. And it's cool to see how you can dismantle everybody after everything that you've learned. But I find it to be pretty boring as a stage. One tip? The easiest robot masters to defeat are Metal Man and Flash Man, so save them for if you need a recharge. Number 12, Heat Man. The big problem with Heat Man is this long gap that you have to jump over disappearing blocks for, unless you have item 2, but it's very easy to get item 2 after the Heat Man stage due to the boss order. Number 11, Clash Man. And yes, it's almost definitely supposed to be Clash, not Crash. Clash Man stage just feels like a warmed over copy of a Leckman stage from the first game, and there's a lot better use of the moving platforms later on. Number 10, Metal Man. I don't have a problem with the conveyor belts. The thing that brings this one down in my eyes is the large hitbox on those dropping spikes. And when you're taking double damage from them, they're especially bad. You can recover health on the drills, assuming that they ever drop health. Number 9, Wiley 2. This is a stage that's so bland I often forget it exists. Really, it's mainly an opportunity to recover your energy before you get to the hard stuff. Number 8, Woodman. Woodman's got a lot of unique features to it, but those dogs can be really nasty. Number 7, Wiley 3. I think that this one's a good challenge for late in the game. Dodging the spikes can be tricky, but I also think it plays fair. Number 6, Quick Man. I was tempted to put this one higher on the list, but here I do think they're being a bit unfair with those beams. Of course, once you know the path through them, it looks pretty cool as you're just zipping by. This is, after all, the stage that everybody remembers. Number 5, Wiley 4. The final platforming challenge before you're done with the game is a good one. Lots of good opportunities for creative uses of your weapons and items. Number 4, Wiley 1. A stage that will test your use of the items, has one of the most memorable bosses in the series, and the absolute best song in the entire Rockman series. Number 3, Flashman. It's a solid level to begin with, but what I really love in it are the alternate paths that you can take. It turns a solid level into a great level. Number 2, Airman. Just the huge variety of challenges on the Airman stage make it special. It's a stage that keeps changing things up on you. And that means number 1, Bubble Man. Water stages are usually awful, but Rockman 2 does it right. You've got physics that shift depending on where you're at, some cool unique encounters, and a little bit of challenging platforming. Rockman 2 is the game that introduced the Rockman water physics, and they got it correct right out of the gate. This was the first Rockman game where the robot masters were designed by contest. Players could submit their own designs for robot masters, and 8 of them were selected to be in the game. While there was a prize given out for those 8 players, it does not appear that it was a golden version of the cart. Those came later. There's one infamous trick in the Japanese version that didn't make it over to the US. There's a brief period of invulnerability when you come back from the submenu. So if you hit start repeatedly, bringing up the menu and closing it, you can avoid some attacks. Personally, I find it kind of tricky to do. Rockman 2 is a real contender for the best game on the Famicom. It's not a flawless game, and I think I have more fun playing it on normal difficulty with the US version. It's probably too easy in that version, but in any form, this is one of the best.